Thanks for joining us here at the Coral Laundromat Studio. It is Weather and Ag in Focus on this slightly brisk January day. And to that extent, let's get that weather part of the day taken care of. So, Addison, what did Dean say about the weather today? Or would you like to just give your interpretation of the weather today? I'd love to hear your call on it.
Today, the weather is you can expect temperatures, sky's blue, kind of.
You know what? This is what happens when we're left to our own devices.
Yeah, just about.
All right. What did the official meteorologist say before you and I make up more things?
Bridgette, unseasonably chilly weather continues to be anchored over the area. I guess the good news out of all this is winds are relatively light. At least they have been over the last couple of days and will continue that way through today and tomorrow. Now, the rest of today, we're looking at kind of a mix of sun and clouds out there with temperatures really not going far in the single digits to around 10 above. And then a weak weather system will move overhead tonight, giving us a little bit of light snow, a dusting to a couple tenths of an inch is about it out of that. And then we'll start to warm things up a touch over the weekend. Light winds on Saturday, partly cloudy with highs in the mid-teens, and then we'll be in the 20s on Sunday. But then on Sunday, another weak weather system moves overhead. That could give us a light wintry mix, a little freezing drizzle flurry activity in the afternoon on Sunday with highs again in the 20s. And then we'll quiet things down Monday and Tuesday, upper 20s. And then the middle and end of next week, we're keeping an eye on as the LRC does have a storm system in the northern or central plains the middle and end of next week, which could be impactful in regards to travel. So you'll want to keep up to date on the forecast middle and end of next week if you have any travel plans in the northern or central plains.
And that, folks, is our most recent weather. That update is brought to us by Progressive Ag Risk Management Specialists. Hey, at least the sun's shining. Well, it is here, so that's a positive for everybody. If you think that the weather's a little chilly, maybe even call it frightful, well, there's a way for you to get away. Starting on Monday, we are going to be taking qualifiers for our Valentine's Day in Vegas giveaway brought to you by Alsager Meats and Kingpins. So this is a contest similar to what we did for that great grocery giveaway. We're going to call your name after you've gone and registered on our website. Again, our website is WDAYradionow.com. You register to win. Then, starting on Monday, that'll be January the 5th, we're going to announce names, including one during this hour of Weather and Ag in Focus. You will then have 11 minutes, 9 minutes and 70 seconds, to call back to get qualified. So if you haven't taken the time yet, now is your chance. Again, that's the WDAYradionow.com website to register for our Valentine's Day Vegas giveaway. We will be giving away a trip to Las Vegas, and there's a whole lot of other details. And you know what? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to announce them all yet. So I'm just going to keep it a surprise. You better go check this out on the website. Again, that's at our website, WDAYradionow.com. And if you are on the highways today and you want to give us a little bit of an update, what do roadways look like? Well, give me a call. Besides, I love to chat. And you can reach me at 701-293-9000. That's the JLA Insurance phone line. Crop insurance is going to make some changes coming up in 2026. And Nate Thorsrud, who farms himself and is a crop insurance agent, well, he understands what this is going to mean to your acres. So give Nate a call. You can talk to him at JLA Insurance, but you can call me at 701-293-9000. If you're feeling shy and you just want to send messages, well, you can do that. My email is ag@flagfamily.com, and my inbox is powered by Superior Grain Equipment. You can protect your farm's future with Superior Grain Storage, Drying, and Handling Solutions. They are superiourbins.com. Again, you can reach me, ag@flagfamily.com. And if you're watching, the live stream is proudly presented by Lighthouse Commodities. Lighthouse Commodities makes sure that you can follow along today on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Acres TV under WDAY Weather and Ag in Focus. Always lots of exciting things to share and reminders because in this 1 hour, there's a lot going on, and I want to make sure that you can reach out anytime you'd like. So, speaking of some of those exciting things that are up and coming, one of them is going to be a new segment that we're starting next week as well. And that's going to be with the landmark companies. Well, we talk about drainage here in the Red River Valley on a pretty regular basis. And drainage, getting that extra water off of fields to help improve yield, soil quality, etc., is pretty important. So we're going to start with the drainage difference next week. We'll be joined by folks from the Landmark team, and we're going to talk about how they can handle everything for you from evaluating the field to final installations. That way, you're not having to juggle contractors, make all sorts of changes that you weren't anticipating, and more. And so again, that's going to start next week. It'll actually start on Monday. The drainage difference with the Landmark companies is going to be something new that we're doing. And also, when it comes to guests and so forth, we have certain segments that happen every week. Later today, I'm going to be joined by Greg Hansen from Market Uncovered. We're going to talk about the commodities market, especially since there were announcements made earlier this week from USDA about the FSA payments that are going to be happening for farms, particularly corn, soybeans, wheat, but then even some of the specialty crops. Let's talk about those implications and what those dollars mean to the local economy as well. So we'll visit with Greg at length here in our next segment. Some news headlines that are going on. Well, down in South Dakota, there is a farm by the name of Jorgensen Land and Cattle Company. They have some farm ground. They raise an awful large amount of cattle. They also have some hunting lands, etc. And one of their tractors was the victim of a shooting. So when you think about hunting, sometimes there could be stray shots. Personally speaking, I'd like to think I'm an okay shot with my rifle, but someone else, well, it doesn't look like this was just a missed opportunity. It looks like it was on purpose. And the Jorgensen Land and Cattle Company by Whitten, South Dakota, had an 8R series John Deere tractor. It was parked about 20 miles away from their home farmyard. And when they went back out this was over a weekend, went back out on Monday to check out, move that tractor, get some other work done, they found that there was a rifle shot through the front grill. Subsequently, there was a hole in the AC evaporator, and then it went on through the radiator. So a couple of things here. One, it doesn't look like this was an accident. Two, thank God there was nobody in the tractor. This is all something to be taken very seriously. Vandalism at any level, whether it's on your personal property in town, whether it's on farm equipment out in the field or in a remote area. These are crimes. And I want to make sure we all understand that those are crimes that are punishable. A few years ago in Western Cass County, we had a rash of shootings where cattle were shot in pasture and then just left to die. That is cruel. These are not games. This is not something that we can just simply be doing because it seemed fun and we were trying out a new rifle. And so I want to highlight that simply as take that more seriously, because in today's world, particularly, we have to think about agroterrorism. When you have organizations such as the animal activists like PETA and the organization that was formerly known as the Humane Society, when they are actively trying to get rid of animal agriculture and other forms of farming, we have to defend ourselves, and we have to make sure that it's well understood that these intentional problems have to be taken seriously and should be punished. And so I just want people to be very careful out there. You don't know when someone is in that tractor. If I had to stop the machine and had to take a restroom break and I'm there and you don't know it, what if that human being is shot? We have to just remember that these are real situations, and we can't allow that type of activity to happen, whether it's on our farms, our ranches, in our fields, or anywhere else for that matter. Soybeans. We talk a lot about soybeans in this region because North Dakota has, out of the top 10, we probably have about 5 of the largest soybean growing counties in the United States. And I mean that on a geographical landmass. We have very large counties, and we grow a high percentage of acres into soybeans. So we're always looking for what could be the next big thing. One of them might be asphalt. The long molecular chain in soybean oil can be strung together to form an elastic material that would mirror exactly what asphalt needs to survive those extremes of summer heat and winter freeze. So this petroleum-based product in the past has been called SPS. But in 2008, a global SPS shortage really triggered a crisis in the asphalt industry. And so labs like those at Iowa State started thinking, what could we do differently? And they've been experimenting with soybean oil as an opportunity when it comes to asphalt. Now, they've already paved an entire parking lot at Iowa State as a bit of a trial run for it. And so now they're working with the Iowa Department of Transportation so they could get this new soybean rubber type product out onto the parking lots and highways out there. And we're going to see what that looks like further down the road. So far, its performance benefits are very good. And unlike a petroleum-based polymer, which you can have some pretty wide swings in their energy markets, soybean oil prices are a bit more stable. So when you're planning for infrastructure projects, you can look further out for 5 or 10 years and be able to get a more accurate pricing on what you're going to be doing for that project. So interesting to note, yet another way that we can find soybeans being used in this region and really nationwide. So anytime we can find a new home for some soybeans, there's a lot of happiness about that. Stay tuned. Much more to come today. Again, we're going to have Greg Hansen with Market Uncovered in our next segment so we can talk about what's happening with those payments coming out to farmers from FSA and then just a bit of a recap on anything that's been going on in the commodities market this week. We'll be right back. Well, we all know farming, it's dirty business. And because of that, that Coral Laundromat is a big help to many. Same day service, large folding tables if you need them. Maybe you've got coveralls and so forth. Fireplace, children's play area, seems kind of cozy. You can do self serve or even just drop up with the drive up window. And they have the opportunity for you to use coin, Apple Pay, Google Pay, credit, or debit cards. They really make it pretty easy to get the laundry done and remember, try to get past the whole dirty part. So go check them out at the Coral Laundromat. They're over at 3620 Veterans Boulevard. Now, there are times that I have farmers or listeners who send me items that they don't necessarily want shared, right? They don't want to say it publicly. So I consider that like my farm confessions. These are some of the private messages and things that I get. Sometimes they're just big shout outs. One was a big shout out because I made mention of what was going on with the National Potato Council meeting in January, and they said thank you because potatoes don't always feel like they get a lot of love. So glad to help, and because of that message, we will now be seeing TJ Hall, who is in North Dakota. He's in potato production. He's also on the executive council for the National Potato Council. We will have him joining us as a guest probably in February to talk more about potatoes. Then I also had a gentleman remind me that he was seeing some news stories where Sid Miller, who's the commissioner of ag in the state of Texas, had brought up a couple of things. And one was that he thinks, just looking at what's going on with the livestock herd in Texas, that it could take 3 years or more to build back the number of head in the U.S. cattle herd. As always, why is that so terribly important? Well, we need more head to increase our supply in order to meet the demand, which could then help us reduce our overall cost. But we've had some time frames here where we've been going through a number of drought, and because of that, we've had less pasture, we've had some liquidation sales and a lot less numbers. I mean, the things that we've all talked about before. But again, I often talk about cattle prices remaining high and inventory numbers staying low through the 2026 year. Again, this was from Sid Miller in Texas. He's our ag commissioner, saying based on what he sees, it could take 3 years. Then southern rust and tar spot keeps pushing further and further into the state of Minnesota. And farmers are getting a rather quick education on how to deal with it. Corn yields were strong. Many places in Minnesota topped 230 bushels, and the beans were also above a trend line. But there's some looks at changing up hybrids for next year, as well as improving fungicide applications so that farmers can stay on top of what looks to be an ever-increasing problem. As this farmer made mention, we learned the hard way that just having a good rotation isn't enough to address these disease issues anymore. And it sounds like there are some farmers in that neighborhood of southeast Minnesota that were leaving a lot of their crop on the farm because they were waiting for the basis to improve before going out to sell. So they're going to keep their eye on acres that may come up for sale. And like a lot of places, the good ground is holding steady in prices while the lesser ground is seeing a definite softening in its price. So those are just some of the things that come across my inbox. Again, that's powered by Superior Grain Bins. And they just make comments and let me know things that they don't necessarily want to share with a name attached, and that's okay. I will share your farm confessions privately. So not attaching any names to them, that type of thing. If you are spending more time out in the shop and maybe you're looking for something a little bit different, there's plenty of podcasts. This show is always saved and put onto our website. Again, that's WDAY radionow.com. And you can listen to past episodes, especially if they're guests that very much have intrigued you over the last few months that you want to go back and listen to. I also do a different podcast as well that's called The Rural Well. And The Rural Well is done with a podcast partner out of Ontario. Her name is Lauren Van Uwick. And Lauren is a sheep farmer and a counselor. She and I talk about what's going on for mental health resources and steps of where to go and what to do when you or someone you know needs help. And we specifically focus on farms and rural areas. So if you have an interest in listening to something like The Rural Well, again, we're trying to give viable pieces of information that can be used. on a day-to-day basis how to help yourself or others around you. But also we interview different guests who have either been through the situation, are able to offer advice and next steps as well. So if you have an opportunity to do some downloads and listen to the Rural Well, that would be excellent. We'd love to have you take a listen. Back to agronomy. Red crown rot. It's a soil-borne fungal disease that really can cut yields by about 70% in its most severe cases. And that warrants some very strong consideration as farmers in affected areas are finalizing their variety selections and management plans for next year. It's historically been prevalent in the United States, in the southern states, but this red crown rot has been moving northward, and it's no longer something to overlook. Minnesota has confirmed cases of red crown rot, which means we probably aren't too far away from it in North Dakota and as well as into South Dakota. The speed at which this disease can move is illustrated by its progress through the state of Illinois. A single infected field was identified in 2018. Since then, red crown rot has spread to more than 1/3 of their state's 102 counties. So when this disease was first found, it was in Rock County, Minnesota. That was in August of 2025. And the nearest location of red crown rot was about 400 miles away in northwest Illinois. So that's a concern as to how quickly this can spread and move, and it's moving across the Midwest rather fast. It's a little tricky to identify early in the season. Its symptoms tend to be more prevalent in July and early August. On the leaves, it looks like SDS, sudden death syndrome in soybeans, which shows some yellowing and browning between the veins. So you really have to look closely. Crop rotation can help. You want to make sure you have some non-host crops, improve drainage, and also using seed-applied fungicides and managing that soybean cyst nematode population, which can help reduce the severity. Some of those fungicides that could be an opportunity: Celtro, Victrato, or Levo and Pretium SDS. That's about that last one. Pretium is a biological seed treatment available from New Farm. Check with your retailers if you are in an area that has had concern about red crown rot, particularly in Minnesota, and then also talk with your agronomist about what is the potential that I should be looking for as a disease if I should think it's in my fields as we get into later in the summer. Again, that's July, early August of 2026. We're going to take a break for the bottom of the hour news. Hopefully we have a chance to connect with Greg Hansen. He is with Market Uncovered and talk about what's happening in the commodity markets. We do have some news from USDA this week in regards to pricing payments that are going to be coming out to farmers by the end of February, and we'll touch on that next. Well, it is winter meeting season, and for so many farm meetings, you have a chance to attend the ones that catch your eye. Well, maybe one of them is hosted by Chris Sherman and Tech Support Farm coming up in January, and I believe that's on next week, Tuesday the 6th at 11 a.m. He has a webinar all about the impacts of ag cybersecurity, what the FBI is saying, what Homeland Security is saying, and the things that you can be doing that should be impactful to your farm as well as your agribusiness. It's free, and you get to ask the questions that apply specifically to you. Check that out at techsupport.farm. Now, Bell Bank, they have been in ag banking for quite some time here. Lynn Paulson has been a guest for this show, and I truly always appreciate his knowledge as a banker for 30 to 40 years within the industry. Now, I'm going to plant this seed for you before we get to the spring, and that is, are you happy with how things are going with your ag lender? Well, maybe you're looking for some more years of experience and someone who draws from a very wide geography. Well, consider Bell Bank as your next ag lender. You can see them at bell.bank. Speaking of banking, well, announcements have been made here just prior to the end of the year. This was on a New Year's Eve press release. USDA has announced the per acre payment rates for qualifying commodities, which is part of the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program. So President Trump committed to the fact that there's an increased certainty in the farm economy, and farmers really want to count on these payment calculations when going to the bank as they plan for spring planting. And this is according to USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins. Farmers who do qualify for the FBA, again, that's the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program, can expect payments in their bank accounts by February 28, 2026. These are a one-time payment for farmers, and it's the bridge to continue to supply the U.S. both with feed ingredients and clothe us, and the rest of the world as well, while the Trump administration continues opening new markets and looking to strengthen our farm safety net. Again, this is all from Brooke Rollins, USDA Ag Secretary. So below are the payment rates for the FBA eligible commodities. Here's what some of those top payments look like. This is on a per acre basis. So for barley growers, it's $20.51 an acre. Canola, $23. Corn, $44.36. Cotton, $117.35. When you look at that difference between corn at 44 and cotton at 117, why would there be such a gap? Well, input costs, right? The cost to raise an acre of cotton is tremendously higher. It's a higher value crop than what you have with corn. Flax has a payment here at $8.05. You also have oats at $81, peanuts $55. We then see even wheat at $39.35, soybeans at $30.88, and sunflower at $17.32. So this program is based on 2025 planted acres. You needed to certify your acres back by December 19th. That was needed to be done across the U.S. All intended row crop uses are eligible, except grazing, volunteer stands, experimental, green manure, if you left a crop standing or had abandoned them for a cover crop. If you are interested in learning more, it is important that you talk to your local FSA office. Your county offices will be most helpful when it comes to making sure you have the right information in order to receive these payments. And again, anytime you make your appointment for FSA, make sure you have all the right information to take with you. Those appointments can take some time. They don't always go quickly, and so you want to make sure that you are well planned in advance and bring all the appropriate documents with you when you attend. We had a question from a listener, and his question was, hold on, I need to take a little drink of water here, Addison, because I don't want to cough in your ear. Is that okay?
That's okay. I'll allow it.
Appreciate it. You're like my judge in the background. I like that. Okay. Question from a listener was, when I talked earlier about Sid Miller, Texas Ag Commissioner's statement that it could take 3 years to rebuild the U.S. cattle herd, the question was, could there be an impact in North Dakota based on the wildfires that we had in the fall of that was in October of 2024? Potentially. We know that we did have a reduction in herd numbers because of that. We also probably saw not just a reduction in live animal numbers, but because some of those animals were injured, whether they had smoke inhalation, lung damage, etc. Excuse me, when they may have been slower to recover, maybe didn't have as good breathing rates, etc. And so we realize that that could also impact our overall herd. I don't have any specific numbers to that, but is it a possibility? Yes, it is. And that's probably one question that we would want to ask more closely of North Dakota Stockmen's Association is, have they seen an impact from that wildfire to potential herd number increases here in the state of North Dakota? Good news. I know some folks over there at the Stockmen's Association who could be helpful. Remember just a few minutes ago I said meetings. There are tons of meetings that are going on for farmers, ranchers, and others interested in agriculture all through our winter months. It's kind of what we do, is have a meeting season. Well, for some of those, you don't even have to leave home. University of Minnesota Extension is putting on their strategic farming Let's Talk Crops for 2026. You have the opportunity to pull up a chair at home and watch the webinars. They are free. They will be held on Wednesdays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and they will go from January 7th through March 26th. You've got some great topics. They also have some outstanding speakers. January 7th, they're going to start out talking about soil compaction. And Jody DeJong Hughes will be leading that discussion. I highly recommend listening to Jody's work as an extension educator in water resources. She has a fantastic background in soil sciences. And I think for those of you who have questions about compaction, even particularly with drainage, this would be an excellent topic to sit in on. On January 14th, there will be a discussion about managing nitrate losses. And this will be done by a couple of different folks, Jeff Strock, as well as Brad Carlson. And so for Minnesota, where we talk about nitrate losses a little bit more heavily due to their watersheds, this would also be a great event to attend. January 28th, there will be a farm finance discussion, and that will be held jointly with University of Minnesota, and our own Dr. Frayne Olson from North Dakota State University will be part of that. Well, pollinators. We all know the importance that they play here in this region. February 4th will be the Protect the Pollinators and Producing a Plenty, and that will be put on by the University of Minnesota Bee Lab. More topics that you can see throughout February will include forecasting tools for crop and pest management, cover crops. Also, how do we adapt to insects, breaking previously reliable modeling tools, corn leaf diseases, strategies for winning the war against water hemp. Bring out the big guns. If we're talking about water hemp, that's not an easy discussion. Earlier this week, I pointed out that there was some research work done in Minnesota that was it Grant County? Let me see if I can find which county. Dodge County. It was in Dodge County. University of Minnesota is testing a water hemp population that had suspected resistance to glufosinate. Glufosinate sold under the trade name Liberty. And it's been a tool that we have used for water hemp control in this region for a number of years, and it's been incredibly effective. But here's a population of water hemp that is showing signs of resistance. In fact, what they did was planted water hemp that was suspected to be resistant, and it needed 3 times its regular dosage to control it in greenhouse trials. More than 80% of the plants in that population survived when treated at that point in time. So this is not a great feeling when it comes to what can we do with water hemp. In the state of Illinois, I believe water hemp has resistance to 7 different modes of action. That does not leave us a lot to continue to use to fight that problem in fields. And it's a particularly troublesome problem in soybean fields. Water hemp, of course, it thrives because, well, it's right there in its name, water, good moisture conditions. And any opportunity water hemp gets to have some extra water as well as sunlight, so in between the crop canopy, if you have a thin stand, etc., it will take advantage of that. And it's an advantage nobody wants to give it. Well, those are just a few of the things that are on my mind today when it comes to headlines. There'll be more when we return. So stay tuned. We should probably also take another little look at the weather. Addison said it's going to be weather out there. We'll see if we can get more details for you. We'll be back. Little change coming up for those of you who like to listen to the ag updates that I do in the mornings during the WDAY's Bonnie and Friends show or over on the flag during Need to Know Morning Show. Minor change. That just means I'm not going to be on Friday mornings. That's going to be starting next week. You'll still hear me Monday through Thursday, and that's not a problem, especially here on WDAY from about 7:20 to 7:30. But just due to some behind the scenes things that are going on, I have a little bit more responsibility in other areas, so got to try to balance that time. So I'll still be on Monday through Thursday mornings, but just not in the on the Fridays. All right, Addison, the weather. Did you make some improvements to your weather forecast?
Yes. So, to those who were listening earlier, they may have heard me give an absolutely breathtaking weather forecast. I have great news. I have jotted down some notes, so prepare yourself for version 2.0 of Addison's
I'm
amazing
here,
weather forecast.
ready,
Excellent.
ready
Because
for it.
today, the weather will be it's everywhere. Uh, Today, we can probably expect temperatures, maybe an average temperature at that. Um, we can expect some visibility out there, of course, and humidity to a point, and great news for anyone who breathes air quality. So,
Oh,
nothing but good news.
it's maybe a little crisp as far as the air quality is concerned. I can understand that. We're shooting for a high of about 10 degrees today from the looks of it. And actually over the weekend, we have some chances for some light snow somewhere in that 30% range. So maybe Saturday night into Sunday looks like the eastern half of Minnesota. So if you're going to Duluth, keep that in mind because Minnesota, Wisconsin could get about 5 inches of snow. Sounds rather unreasonable if I were to say so. And that could lead to snow or freezing rain possibilities here in the Dakotas. This Sunday system seems pretty subject to the most change regarding where its track is going to be, the intensity, what the impacts might be. All right, look, we've had enough. We've had to start naming blizzards. In fact, somebody told me that the last one was Blizzard Brad. I don't know that I need Blizzard Catherine coming up on Sunday. So let's just try to, you know, keep this one very realistic, and hopefully everybody in Wisconsin has their snow blowers all tuned up and ready to go from the sounds of it. Let's see what it looks like. Now, sometimes there are myths. Any myths that come to mind for you in particular, Addison?
Bigfoot, where is he? Nessie, my dad.
um,
There's lots of missing creatures out there in the world.
Jacob, who sat in your chair before you did, he got me a T-shirt one year at Christmas that said "Bigfoot, World's Greatest Hide and Seek Winner." Probably so.
Not wrong.
Not wrong. But that's not where I'm headed to when I ask about myths. Sometimes there are myths about rural America. And you know I'm a great defender of the rural areas. So we're gonna blow some of those apart today. First of all, roughly 1 in 5 Americans live in rural areas. So that places the federal government definition based on small populations and low housing density into a little bit of a stereotype. So many people understand rural America through a lot of those stereotypes, right? They just think we're all farming, traditionalists, politically uniform, but there's some changes that they might not be aware of. So let's talk about first, rural America is actually, it's always said that rural America is disappearing due to depopulation. They think that we're just emptying out. Well, that's not quite true. From 2010 to 2020, most rural counties lost population in the U.S., but about a third of them grew, especially if you're in a city near a lake, a mountain, or other natural attractions. Well, we've all seen the big cow at New Salem. That's an attraction. Maybe that area grew too. But there have been times like the 70s and the 1990s when rural populations grew faster than those cities, and they're actually called rural rebounds. One of the most important things to know about a rural population change is that the definition of rural will change over time. When a rural town grows enough, the U.S. Office of Management reclassifies it as urban. Obviously, I'm still having a little bit of like New Year's flashbacks. So in other words, if we reclassify a town as urban, rural America isn't necessarily disappearing. It just got reclassified. Some of those towns are being defined more urban than they once were. Now, most rural Americans do live on farms, and farming is still important in a lot of rural areas, but it's no longer the only way that rural Americans make a living. Roughly 6% of rural jobs are in agriculture, and most farm families also have members who work off farm, often for access to health insurance and retirement benefits. So, a bigger source of employment in rural America is actually manufacturing. Manufacturing plays a larger role as a share of jobs and earnings in rural areas than in cities. It also means deindustrialization. Steady job losses in manufacturing over the decades have been especially painful in rural America. Unlike large cities with lots of employers, rural communities rely on just a few. So we all know that when rural plants or factories close, the local impacts can be seen as very devastating. The largest share of rural jobs today are in the service sector: retail, food service, home health care, hospitality. Now, these jobs often pay lower wages, have fewer benefits, and unstable hours, making it harder to stay financially secure. And so that may be part of the mindset and or myth that is thought about in rural America. Now, when rural families are more traditional than urban families is one of the thoughts that are always considered about rural areas. Historically, rural children were more likely to live with married parents, but that's actually no longer the case. Today, rural children are less likely than urban children to live with their married parents and are more likely to live in a cohabitating, unmarried parental home or in the care of their grandparents and other relatives. Partly as a result, rural child poverty rates are higher than urban rates, and many rural families rely on safety nets like the SNAP program, etc. So, there are myths that are out there, but sometimes we just need more details to go along with them. U.S. ag groups are happy to hear about a major development in trade leadership. U.S. Senate has confirmed in the month of December Julie Callahan as the chief ag negotiator in the Office of the U.S. Trade, and that is a role pivotal to advancing American ag interests on our global stage. She has currently served as Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for Ag Affairs and Commodity Policy and will oversee efforts to reduce tariffs and non-tariff barriers, negotiate and implement free trade agreements, as well as represent U.S. ag in multilateral organizations like the World Trade Organization. Her work will directly impact farmers, ranchers, and food manufacturers, hoping to open new markets and ensuring fair trade practices all across the globe. That, of course, will be a great positive for many. Over in Greece, a little something you might not be aware of, but Greek farmers are protesting. They have been blocking the airports at Crete and blocking the highways with tractors, combines, and other implements while they're there. And they are protesting delays in the payment of subsidies, and they have been swarming into areas in order to create just a little bit of chaos. These clashes have broken out over the lack of payment, and these are backed subsidies that happened in the wake of a scandal which revealed fraudulent subsidy claims. Irate farmers, again, are deploying all sorts of equipment, tractors, and more in order to stop traffic, blockade roads, airports, and more. Now, these payment delays have come as authorities review all requests following revelations of fraudulent claims for EU farm subsidies. Protesters have argued that delays amount to a collective punishment, leaving honest farmers in debt, unable to plant fields for the next season. Greece's farming sector has also been hit this year by an outbreak of goat and sheep pox that has led to a mass culling of livestock. A lot going on over there, especially protests. That's not always something that registers on the nightly news, but also the disease outbreaks. Spain has been fighting with an Asian swine flu because there have been some of their wild boars have been caught and tested positive for it, and they have great concerns about that spreading to their commercial operations because the pork industry is very important to the entire country. So these are things that happen worldwide for a lot of different reasons, and we just have to keep track of them and see what's happening and what could affect us down the road. It's been a big week here for Weather and Ag in Focus. Next week will be as well. I have no doubt we have a full lineup of guests. For those of you who might be at Devil's Lake for the Lake Region Extension Roundup, see me there. I'll be speaking on Thursday morning. Addison, everyone else, hope you all have a fantastic weekend. The Jay Thomas Show is next.